What's going on, everyone? In this video, we're going to talk about general contractors in regards to building vacation rentals. Welcome back, everyone. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to find a general contractor, what questions to ask if you should hire a big general contractor compared to a smaller one. So before we talk about anything when it comes to general contractors, I first want to say that I am not a GC. I've never considered getting my GC license either. Don't get me wrong, what my GC does is incredible and there's a lot of money to be made in that profession, but I feel like my time is better used in designing properties and putting the financing together for my deals. Also, the things that I'm going to say in this video are based off of my experiences using my GCs. It may be completely different for your situation. So the first thing I want to talk about is if you should use a big contractor compared to a smaller one. There are pros and cons to both sides, like with anything. When it comes to a bigger contractor, you're essentially purchasing their experience and their team. So for the first pro is exactly that. You're paying for their experience. If you're using a big general contractor, they've obviously done some right things to get to the point where they are now. They have already made most of their mistakes earlier in their career. Take it from me, mistakes means money out of your pocket. If you're developing property to rent on places like Airbnb, then every month that passes, you're paying for it because it's another month that the place is not being rented. If that makes any sense. On top of paying for the mistakes by redoing or adding work that wasn't originally planned for. So the second pro is that the bigger GCs have a crew that's already on their staff. This can translate to paying less for your overall build because the GC does not have to sub everything out. It also can lead to faster transitions in the building phases because the GC's crew are again on their payroll. You aren't waiting for a subcontractor to finish a previous job. I would say when it comes to using a bigger GC, they need at least a frame and crew on staff. If you're using a GC that has a crew, I'm saying that at least they need a framing crew on staff. The third pro is they will understand the permitting process in your area a little better than someone who just got their GC license. They will know who to talk to in the permitting offices in your city or county and give you realistic timelines when it comes to permits. Some of you who have built a home before know that getting permits to start building sometimes takes longer than the actual build itself. So those are my top 3 pros for using a larger GC, and now for some cons. In my opinion, the biggest con to using a larger GC is that they simply won't have time for you if you're just starting out with no experience. For example, my first cabin was 800 square feet, where I didn't use any premium materials. We ended up building a beautiful cabin, but that was because we had a great design compared to the premium materials added to the place. If I would have tried to get that project done with one of the bigger builders in my area, I don't think that they would have taken the job. Even now, where I'm trying to build 6 cabins next year, I doubt that the luxury builders in my area would want to take the job because the cabins I'm going to be building are anywhere between 500 to 1,000 square feet each. The larger GCs would rather build one 4,500 square foot home than 6 smaller cabins. I hope that makes sense. The second con to using a larger GC, from my experience, are they're not as flexible when it comes to their terms and payments. Most of the larger GCs want some sort of deposit up front, even before bidding out the project, even before telling you how much the project's gonna cost. Some GCs I've talked to in my area require 5% down just to start, again, before pricing out the entire deal. That may be a lot if you're also getting a loan that requires a 5 to up to 25% down payment. So far, I have not paid any deposit for planning any of my projects. The third con, which is similar to the first con, is the larger GCs may be too busy to even take on your project. Even if they take on your project, they may be booked out for 6 months to 2 years before they can start on your project. 2 years might sound crazy, but right now in 2021, I heard of builders being booked out as far as 2 years. Hopefully it gets better. I'm seeing it get better, but right now that's where we're at. So sticking to realistic timelines. So those are some of the pros and cons that I have ran into in regards to using larger GCs for your vacation rental projects. Now let's talk about some of the pros and cons to using a smaller GC. The first pro, which I think is the most important pro, is that a smaller GC will be more flexible with you in terms of designing and building your projects. You'll be able to get a hold of the GC without having to go through any of their employees or their team. A lot of the times you can meet weekly with the GC, a smaller GC, to discuss the progress for your projects. The second pro is the flexibility in financing. I remember the first project I did with my GC that I use to this day. The budget was incredibly tight because it was all I could get approved for with the lender. We had gone over budget on a couple items, and almost my GC's entire fee was eaten up by the overruns. My GC was comfortable enough to start the 2 other projects the following year without getting paid for the first project. He was eventually paid, but I don't think that I would have been able to start 2 new projects if I was using a bigger a better contractor, a bigger contractor. Another way you can be flexible with a small builder is seeing if they would be comfortable in allowing the construction draws from the lender to be deposited into your account that you control. If you're just starting out with a newer builder, I would recommend this anyways. You can then pay your builder directly from your account. It's just another layer of protection on your end when you're first starting. The third pro, if you're just starting, is you're going to grow with your GC. If both of you guys are just starting, you're going to grow with them. If you plan on doing multiple projects a year, then you'll be building your businesses together, which is what my GC and myself are currently doing. Now, for some of the cons of using a smaller GC. Like I already mentioned a couple times, your GC might lack some experience, which you may pay for on the front end. The second con is your smaller GC more than likely won't have a crew put together. That may slow things down when it comes to scheduling the subcontractors and getting bids for your projects. It also may cost more to build because usually when everything is subbed out, it costs more. The third con that I've found is getting your builder approved with specific lenders. If you're using a lender to finance your build, which I always recommend compared to paying for it cash, then your new builder might not get approved with your lender. Some residential builders like to see that the builder has experience. Every lender is different. Some lenders that I have found simply want the GC to be insured and have an active license in the state, which is what your goal should be. If you're looking for a lender, find someone, if you're starting with a smaller GC, find someone that is a lender that will approve your builder without barely any experience. If you're just trying to get a commercial loan, then most lenders will require a GC to have built a couple homes before approving them. So again, if you're using a commercial loan, don't even try to think about using a newer GC with no experience. So those are some of the pros and cons to using a smaller GC. Now, the last 2 things I'm going to talk about is the current situation I'm in, what I currently use, and how to find a GC if you're just starting out. What I do is use a smaller GC. The reason being was when I first started, I barely could get approved for a $150,000 home loan. I don't think a larger GC would have even given me a second thought if I presented them that deal. I found my GC when I was working at a place 3 years ago. I overheard him say that he just got his license so he could build a house for his family. We went out to lunch and then I asked him if he would consider putting that house on hold and build my first cabin. He agreed to it, and now 3 years later, he's building 4 cabins for me this year and hopefully 6 next year. Now let me say something based off that. My GC was new, but he had over 15 years of building experience working for other companies in the construction industry. I would never recommend working with a GC, even if they're new, that has no experience. That's a very important difference that you have to understand in what I wanted to say. Now, say that you just moved to a new city or simply you know no one in the building industry. Where do you start? I would start first by asking friends and family. If you come up drive there, then go around for a drive in your city. And if any homes are being built in your area, usually the builders will have their signs put outside of the build, sort of trying to advertise themselves. If that doesn't work either, then I'd recommend Angie's List or another website called House. I'll link the two in the description below. Those two websites are a good place to look for GCs because they're vetted by the site. And on top of that, most of the GCs are reviewed by people who have hired them. I do have plans on doing individual videos where I walk through exactly how to find a GC on House and Angie's List. I had plans on doing it in this video, but the video just would have ran way too long. For now, simply just go to the websites by yourself, and I'll answer any questions in the comments below. Lastly, you can look for the list from your local building association. If you don't have a local building association, then look for the National Building Association website. This site is usually used to verify your GC's license, but you can also look for a GC in your area via that site. On the association's website, there may be some links that will send you over to the GC's website so you can look at their past projects they've completed. A couple questions to ask the GC once you get a hold of them are: 1, are you taking on any new projects? 2, how far out are you booked, like we already talked about? 3, do you require deposit to start pricing out my build? 4, how do you handle cost overruns and change orders? 5, how many projects have you completed in the last 3 years? 6, how long have you been in the construction industry, or how long have you had your GC license? 7, would you be comfortable working on a smaller project? If you're building a smaller project, to me a smaller project is anywhere between 300 to 1,000 square foot. 8, how do you handle draws and disbursements from the lender? Would you feel comfortable having the money deposited in an account I own and paying you and your subs from there? And then 9, simply ask them what their process is from start to finish. Those are usually the 9 questions I ask when I'm either on the phone or going to their offices. Sometimes I'll take them out to lunch to sort of talk to them. These are very general questions I just went over, but it'll allow you to get a feel for the builder if you should work with them or not. One last thing I wanted to talk about was if you're interested in getting your GC license, you'll save anywhere between 15 to 25% on the overall build. Just keep in mind that some lenders do not allow you to be your own GC. Make sure you know what your lender requires prior to getting your GC license. So what I just talked about isn't everything, but it's a good start. I hope this video has helped you with deciding what type of GC to use, where to find them, and what questions to ask them. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them below in the comments. Also, if you're interested in scheduling a one-on-one Zoom call with me, I've included a link to that below. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully I answered some questions you've had in regards to finding a GC and if you should use a smaller GC compared to a bigger one. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.